Greetings and welcome to another Grenfell MediaWatch update. Today's edition I want to call Beware of the Grifters. Now I want to start really with a story about some approved cladding that actually failed the fire test, and this is a really important story actually, because in many ways what it essentially means is that any buildings that are using this so-called approved cladding actually are still unsafe. Now, some of you may have heard the story about the 95-year-old who's in hospital because of stress, just simply because he can't afford to pay the bill to actually replace the cladding on his premises. And he shouldn't have to. As some of the tenants have rightly said, this is actually an issue of work that's not actually essential, it's not maintenance, it's not repair work, but it's actually enhancement work. It's actually done for cosmetic reasons. Now, some nameless government administrators made a comment that the private sector should actually follow the lead of the social sector. But this is not taking place, clearly. Hello. But what else is happening on this situation with Grenfell? Now, if we look across the pond to Australia, where the government's a little bit more progressive on this issue, we can see that there are hospitals that are now starting to have their cladding removed. Now, the nurses union are asking that the funding doesn't come from the health budget, and this is rightly so. That'd be pretty much like asking patients to fund for mistakes in their own healthcare. Now, in Glasgow, the government is doing the right thing. They're spending, I think it's £6 million on actually replacing the cladding, and they've actually acknowledged it's going to come from taxpayers' money. Now, even though that is the right thing and it's coming from the government coffers, there's a part of me that says, shouldn't that funding really come from the profits and the shares and the dividends of those who actually made these decisions, that actually made the profit from actually installing the cladding in the first place? You see, up and down the UK, this is still a serious issue. In Slough, for example, residents are being charged £1 million for the removal of the cladding. Now, they actually approached their insurance companies, but hey, guess what the insurance company said? When the cladding was actually installed 3 years ago, it was valid, it was safe. You see, when we looked at Proctor Insurance, and that's the company that's actually responsible for covering Grenfell Towers and works in conjunction with the Kensington and Chelsea Council, they're actually aware that they now have properties that actually are not covered, are not safe. But they also have 50 million, well actually they increased it to 75 million reserves to cope with Grenfell. In fact, they're so confident that they can weather the storm, they think it's going to have zero impact on their operations. And that's a really interesting position to hear from an insurance company. And perhaps it's time now for us to reflect on the inquiry process itself. I mean, we know that the hearing's been kicked back from January to the end of February. Still not heard anything. In fact, that's not completely true. What we also know is that the inquiry seems to have nothing but contempt for the bereaved of those who suffered in that massacre, those who lost loved ones. And I say this because the family of Khadija Kalofi, they paid some £400 for their passport application so that they can actually give evidence inside the inquiry. They'd been granted core participant status. But we don't even know now whether they're actually going to be allowed back in the country, because immigration is such a big bugbear with this whole Brexit nonsense. But on the issue of justice, we've heard much in the media about that fraudster Ligali, who actually claimed £10,000, being jailed for, I think it's 21 months. Now, I wish the media would stop referring to him as the Grenfell fraudster, because that's got nothing to do with the community. He's just a nasty, despicable little man. However, I did note with some interest that the government's response to the inquiry petition has actually changed. They've updated it. And I can't really see much difference between the original response and this response, other than the fact that they're reasserting this whole point about there being potentially a community panel which will sit alongside Morbic. Now, we need to be clear about this. I think a good clue to the government's intention with this latest update is in the name of the panel, Community Advisory Panel. A panel from the community that will be advising Morbic, not working alongside him in equality. There's going to be no parity with Morbic. He's still going to be the boss. He's still going to be in charge. But we're talking about tokenism here again. It's a shame though, because I think there's that Grenfell recovery scrutiny thing that takes place in Kensington. The chair there has actually taken a really good approach. He's actually decided at the next meeting they're going to call a halt to how it's been proceeded in the past. And they're actually going to look for feedback and actually get the voice of the community to actually start shaping the agenda of the meetings. They're actually being responsive to the needs of those that they're claiming to help. Unlike the government, unlike this so-called public inquiry. And in closing, I'd like to say how wonderful it's to hear that Khadija's work is actually going to be exhibited at Kettle's Yard in an exhibition really showcasing and exploring how art can be used as a force of political and social change. In many ways, it's Khadijah's passing that led to me being here, doing this video. And I want to thank the rest of the Grenfell MediaWatch team that makes this possible, as well as my condolences to her family and everyone else who's still being affected by this massacre. I hope to see most of you on the silent walk this week. And I'm going to close as usual by saying, may the ancestors continue to guide and protect us. Ashe.